Hello, and welcome to another episode of Rhapsody in Cinema, the podcast where we talk about movies, memories, and everywhere in between. I'm your host, Stephen Romney, freelance film critic and part-time pizza connoisseur. Joining me for this episode is another familiar voice who you're hearing giggling right now, but you probably recognize the laugh if you are a frequent listener of the Geek News Reviews and Opinions podcast. For today I have with me Brinton Valli. Brinton, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing fantastic, thank you. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. Had one of those days where I tried working out, but then the workout didn't feel that satisfying, so it's kind of like, did I do it right?
Yeah, I definitely know that feeling.
Yep. Well, and I hope the listeners have either eaten or are in the process of eating, as the film we're talking about tonight involves heavily with food, as we are talking about the film Chef, written and directed by Jon Favreau.
Woohoo! Yay!
Yep, and so we'll go straight into it. Why is Chef your favorite movie?
Oh man, why is Chef my favorite movie? To be simple, and I'll be as simple as I can because, I can ramble quite heavily. Chef for me, I saw it at a time in my life where I guess you could say I was kind of like down to the dumps. I was kind of in a rut. It was something that needed to give me some motivation in my life to get out more, to take off the shackles of burden that I had on my shoulders and just be like, you know what, I'm going to live my life. I am not going to care about all the craps that's going on right now. I need to be happy. I need to choose to be happy, and I just need to deal with what I was going through at that moment in a much better outlet. After I saw it, because I was like flipping on IMDb one day and I was like, oh, this looks like a good movie, and I had like a bunch of other actors and actresses that I absolutely love, but I couldn't go see it in the theaters, and then they put it on Netflix. So I took some time in the evening, watched it, had some good food, and I was just like, holy crap, like this is like a really good feel-good movie. And it was that motivation I needed to get out more, and I actually got into the food truck scene and was able to experience the food truck culture that we have in Salt Lake City, and it's a lot of fun, and I am so super happy that I was able to get that motivation I needed from such a simple film.
Yeah, that's one thing a lot of people tend to forget, that films have the power to inspire and to motivate. I mean, everyone talks about stuff like Rocky or trying to think like Remember the Titans, stuff like that, but sometimes you can find inspiration in the most unexpected places.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of funny how you mentioned how you felt like you were in a rut, especially considering, because I did get to see this film in the theater, and it had a lot of baggage prior to its release that I kind of interpreted from the film, because you had Jon Favreau, he was just fired off of Iron Man, he was fed up, Cowboys and Aliens tanked, he was very much in a creative rut himself, and so for me, I kind of saw the film as almost him working through his own issues, as I mean, you can almost see the way Dustin Hoffman's character could kind of be seen as the representative of big Hollywood, the big blockbuster movie industry, telling him, do it our way or you're taking the highway, and then him deciding, you know what, screw this, I'm done, and then going back to basics, much like his character Carl Casper does by starting up with the food truck.
Yeah, it's interesting that you kind of put that backstory into play, because that is something that I did not know going into this film, watching this film, and it actually brings a lot more of that. What's the phrase I just used? I'm struggling with words this evening, but feel good. It drives home that feel good movie vibe that I got, at least from watching the film. Just based on what you said, I can definitely see how he was in a good position. He was this top-notch chef. He had all he wanted. He had a great kitchen staff. He was in a really, really good place in his life, even if he wasn't like, on best of terms with his ex-wife or always seeing his kid when he was supposed to for visitation. And all of a sudden, everything just crumbles underneath him. And going back to the basics was his way of returning back to, using your analogy, I got caught up in this big, huge Hollywood mumbo jumbo. I've gone back to my roots. I've gone back to what I know best, and I am now in a better place that is far more awesome than where I was before, as we see at the end of the film.
And that's one thing I noticed that they even kind of reinforce in the cinematography when he's cooking the food, like the food that he wants to cook, that the restaurant will let him cook. The analogy I use is that it was kind of shot the way porn would be shot, but to the way I interpret it is that, okay, it's him obsessing over the food and getting really engrossed into it, almost to an unhealthy degree. But then by the film's end, when he's basically maintained a better relationship with his son and is basically back to basics on the food truck, you find that they kind of shy away from that cinematography where it's all about the food, where you see it goes from being, oh, it's all about the food being cooked, to, okay, it's more shots of him and his son working the food truck and the memories. And that's kind of one thing I rediscovered watching this again, was that, okay, it's very much, I can see how they used the cinematography to enforce of, oh, he thought it was just the food, but then after basically crashing and burning in a way that became, at least in the context of the film, became immortal on the internet, it kind of made him realize, okay, here's what's actually important. Here's why I actually like doing what I do. And that's something I haven't seen in a lot of films, where they actually use the cinematography and the editing to reinforce those themes like that.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, he had, like, the cast, essentially his friends, they were all pushing him to do something better. They were just like, dude, we see that you're in a rut. We see that your life is starting to slowly crumble underneath you. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? And finally, when he was just like, fine, I'll do it. I'll do the food truck. Everybody still, like, rallied behind him, and they're like, oh yeah, we're still with you. Like, we're happy for you. We want to see you succeed. We're going to be, we're going to get right down there, hands and knees, get dirty with you, do it with you. I thought that was super, super, super awesome. Just because types of movies that try to drive home that type of theme, those previous supporters generally aren't there once the person or the character finally starts doing what they've been pestered to do. It's kind of like, oh, we didn't really think you were going to do it, LOL, JK. His friend pretty much quit his job, flew out to Miami, and was like, yeah, I'm totally, like, for a lack of a better term, balls deep with you in this. I'm not getting paid? Awesome, let's do it. I'm ready to cook. I'm ready to have fun. And that's what they did. And I thought that was super awesome. And I loved how he was able to get back to where he was before, but in a much better place.
Indeed, and that's one thing that is also very hard to do, and it's very hard to do that sort of storyline and have it feel real. I mean, it's a problem with a lot of shonen anime, where you have the main character charging up the random attack they pulled out of their butt, and you've got all the friends like, we're behind you! Whereas here you actually see what kind of relationship they had before things went to hell for Carl. And one thing I definitely liked is how they incorporated social media into it, since this came out at a time, and it's still something filmmakers are trying to figure out, is how to actually, for lack of a better term, how to shoot social media, how to frame it in a scene beyond just cross-cutting between a computer screen and the eyes. And so I definitely liked how they would, like, superimpose the tweets. You would see the birds flying when the tweets are flying out, saying, oh, like, the food truck's here. And I definitely liked how they felt they made it more part of the composition, rather than trying to do cross-cutting or simply having them look at a phone, but without actually selling the idea of, okay, he's actually tweeting something.
No, I completely agree with you. As time continues to go on, and with how prevalent social media is only going to become, I don't think it's ever going to be something that will just disappear into nothingness. It's just going to grow and eventually evolve into something bigger and maybe not entirely better, but like you said, it was really cool how they were able to show that in a film. For me, kind of more on a more professional side, because I do YouTube part-time and also for fun, but it was kind of a cool way to see how his son, Carl's son, was able to market the food truck as they were going all the way back to California. And just the way that he did all of the marketing and the social media, and how he did the hashtags and the pictures, it made me sit there and I was like, wow, I could really benefit just from this very amateur way of marketing and very amateur social media for myself, for my own YouTube. And it even made me in a way want to ask someone, will you, like, manage and market me? Because I can only market myself so much. And even like right now, where I'm not, like, super active on YouTube because I've been binging all the new content with the new expansion for Final Fantasy XIV, I haven't really had a chance to get on Twitter and be like, oh hey, I'll be back with more videos on this day. Or, oh, here's my reaction to this bit of news that I completely missed because I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV for 10 plus hours that I haven't looked at my phone in like 2 days. And I really, really like the way that they drove home the marketing, drove home how social media really, really works. And also the good that can come from social media. And this is just like a little mini tangent, but you see so much cinema, so much film that surrounds like the bad and the nasty and the evil that surrounds social media and just how nasty people can be on the internet. But this film just really drove home, hey, look how good the internet can be. Instead of just slashing and destroying and trolling, you can actually, change people's lives. I know what Carl's son did for him was a very indirect way of getting him business for the food truck, but in a sense, it was one of those healing processes that Carl needed because people liked his food. His son was able to get it out into social media. People wrote good things about it, and they kept coming back for more. They kept saying, this is good, you're a good cook, this is amazing. And that is what he needed as he was making his own personal journey on the food truck, piecing his life back together and knowing, I am a good chef, I know I'm good, I just needed to be reminded by going back to the basics. And I'm surrounded by the people who brought me back to that point.
I also like how, in addition to how his son is able to help him, that's kind of the main driving thing, is how the trip basically becomes the way he finally starts to connect with his son. And I may be projecting a lot because I am a child of divorced parents, so it did kind of hit that nerve a little bit. Because the whole him at the start of the film, like, oh, take him to a theme park, take him to a movie, stuff like that. I've been in that kid's shoes, and so I kind of know what it's like where the attention is given, but it's half-assed. It kind of resonated with me on a personal level, but then when his son is teaching him what Twitter is and how it works, and he's like, oh, hey, this is actually, cool, us just figuring stuff out. And then it kind of just begins to grow from there, where it goes from, okay, he's teaching him about social media, then he starts teaching him about being a cook, especially with the rocky start when they're trying to get the food truck ready to go with the hotel pan with, like, the who knows how old food that the son just tries to throw away, and they basically make it clear, yeah, it's not gonna be fixed overnight.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you make a fantastic comparison there. I don't even think I need to repeat it at all, but you can totally tell how, hey, this is something that I like. And, they work on it together. And then the dad, hey, this is something that I love. And if you want to be a part of it, this is how you do it. And bringing those two very, very different worlds together, I obviously was able to repair a very broken relationship between father and son, and made it so that by the end of the movie, they're great friends. The relationship has been mended. They want to do those two very, very different things and combine them together and just keep going, keep having fun.
One of my favorite exchanges is the scene where the son burns the sandwich and it's just like, oh, well, they're not paying for it. And he literally just takes him aside and he's just like, hey, like this, I love it, this is what I spend my whole life doing, and kind of gives him that whole lecture. That was definitely like a really good exchange. There were a lot of really good exchanges in this film, and it may be because they have a lot of really talented, well-known and really talented actors here that kind of, they bounce off of each other really, really well. I guess the only time I had kind of a nitpicky thing was with the one scene with Robert Downey Jr., but even then I kind of get what his character was supposed to be. It was very much, he was trying to basically almost lord over Carl, the fact of, oh, you're coming to me for help, and so I'm basically just gonna use this chance to bust your chops throughout the entire thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I also find it very interesting. Like you said, he got fired off of Iron Man. I just found it super funny that a lot of the people that he worked with were actors and actresses that he previously worked with on Iron Man. It's just super, super interesting because there he is. He's surrounded by essentially people that he used to be with, again, which is a representation of where he was before. And then by film's end, he is with, I can only think of the actress, like the actress from Modern Family. I can't remember.
Yeah, Sofia Vergara.
Thank you, Sofia. And then his buddy, whose name I can't remember at all.
John Leguizamo.
Thank you. This is why you're here. Well, technically I'm the guest, but still, this is why you're here. And then his son. And so again, it just shows, hey, I was with you. I was in this okay position, and now I'm in a much better position. I'm with people who actually care, who want to see me succeed, who drove me to get to this point. And the Iron Man cast that he was with before essentially were the people who put him into this pitfall and then they drove him to get to where he was by the end of the film. And so that is something that just kind of like popped into my head that I really, really liked. But kind of going back to what you were saying before, the exchanges between like him and Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson, you can tell that they're a little bit awkward. Like I felt awkward. I felt like, ugh, I'm not like, how can he stand being around these people? How can he stand talking to these people? And then you can see a completely change in his demeanor. You can tell that the relationships he has with his then remarried wife, his son, his friends, his family, the food critic that he partnered with, you can tell that those relationships are a lot better. They're a lot more fluid, they're natural, they're fun, they're peppy. They're not what they were at the start of the film.
Yeah, he's definitely not as tightly wound, especially when you consider that with the food truck, especially as they're going across how they switch up the different recipes for each state, where first in Miami they have it very strictly Cuban with yuca frita and the Cubano sandwiches, and then they go to Texas and then they have like, okay, let's get this like 8-hour smoked beef and make these sliders with this beef, and then basically like switching up the different recipes as they go along, as they have like the different ingredients. And that was something, one, it made me think, oh, okay, that's something I should probably try making next chance I get, but also it very much shows that it's very much, he goes from this very rigid environment of the restaurant that he was working at the beginning, but then now with the food truck he has the creative freedom to change menu items on the fly and basically play fast and loose with what type of cuisine he's doing. And then that ultimately pays off with him getting his own restaurant when the food critic kind of comes to him and says like, hey, yeah, you're cooking for yourself now, I want to back you, that's why I'm not going to write anything about it, because I have a vested interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Additionally, you can even see from the beginning of the... I mean, of course you can see, it's obvious. He wants to cook his own food. He wants to do his own thing. But he also wanted to be in a very secure job environment. You know, look, like, I'm this big hot shot chef. I know what I'm doing. You know, people come to eat this food. People come to eat the food that I cook. But that's what it was. It wasn't his food. They were just coming to eat food that he cooked on a preset menu by an owner of a restaurant who was like, oh, hey, this is my food, this is my menu, this is what you're cooking, and you don't really get that much liberty or freedom in the creativity of what goes out of this kitchen. And I mean, I'm pretty sure that kills a lot of chefs. I'm pretty sure there's even like chefs in Bobby Flay's kitchen or Gordon Ramsay kitchen, or, you know, these celebrity chefs. I'm pretty sure, like, I mean, they're the restaurant owners. They set the menus. They're the ones who say this is what you're serving at this restaurant at this time. And the chefs are bound by that menu. I bet they don't really get all that much creativity in what they get to do. And I'm pretty sure that like kills a chef inside. The way that I think about it is, I'm kind of using YouTube as an example, but if I was part of like a larger production company and somebody was calling out the shots and they were saying, no, this is how you do this, 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 and this, and you don't really get to put your own creative input into it, that would kind of kill me inside, because I'd be like, well, I want to be able to kind of do my own thing. This was good for Carl. It's very obvious that he wants to do his own thing, but he needed something stable. And the food truck for him was not stable. But once he was able to take his own creativity, put it into the food truck, and make those changes along the way, clearly it wasn't an issue because people still loved him, and he was able to own his own restaurant by the movie's end and be able to do what he wants, which is cook his food.
And especially when you consider that Dustin Hoffman's character, they make it pretty clear that his character isn't a chef. He was basically the guy bankrolling and funding the restaurant. And so to kind of add to that YouTube analogy, it's like, imagine you're being told to make YouTube videos a certain way by someone who's never made a YouTube video and has no idea how the website actually works. That's why I kind of kept thinking of, okay, this film is clearly a metaphor for what Favreau went through when working with Marvel, because you then have, I'm not going to say it's specifically Kevin Feige, but you have the powers that be. And not even just with Iron Man, but also with Cowboys and Aliens and a lot of the other bigger films he did, where they're basically like, hey, you need to do things this specific way for this specific brand. This is what people want. And then having things kind of crash and burn for him, and then he went back to basics. And Jon Favreau has since bounced back. Although I had my own thoughts about Jungle Book and didn't particularly care for it, it very much is one of those cases of, okay, he bounced back and is starting to make the kind of films he wants and having the best of both worlds. The big box office success, but still being allowed to put his own creative flourish on things.
Yeah, I also kind of have my own opinions with Jungle Book. The whole like taking those Disney animated classics and turning them into live action films. There are a few that I will say, oh, this was really good. It was on par or maybe even a little itsy bitsy 1% better than the animated film because nothing can beat the Disney animated classics. But Jungle Book for me was kind of like I saw it. It was okay. I wouldn't really see it again just because I like the animated film a lot better than the live action film. I mean, not to say that Jon Favreau is not a good movie producer or director or anything. Like, I think he's fantastic. I really have enjoyed the films that he has directed, written, produced. I mean, obviously, the one that we're talking prominently this evening is my absolute favorite, but Jungle Book just didn't hit it out of the ballpark for me. I would rather watch the animated film.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. To kind of get back on point, though, that kind of knowing all of that going in, at least for me, it was very hard to not think about those analogies. Although there's been a great deal of distance that anyone watching the film now probably wouldn't know that going in. I'm always fascinated when a filmmaker kind of uses their craft to work through various issues, even if they're not aware of it, even if they're not aware of the fact that they're working through feelings they experienced. Tim Burton's also been going through a similar period where he worked through a lot of his funk with his two most recent movies and then got back into his groove. And so it's always fascinating when you can kind of see shades of the artist in the art, where you can kind of tell what informed them to make certain decisions and what informed them to go in certain directions. I always find that sort of fascinating since, again, most people watch movies and don't really think about them, especially given how they're almost factory made nowadays. I mean, if there could be a way to automate it, you bet Hollywood would.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because most of the films that we are getting these days are the ones that they don't seem to get the most attention. They are getting the most attention. Are just those blockbuster superhero movies or sequels or books made into film, which thank God you don't really see all that much often anymore because Marvel and DC just seem to dominate those spotlights a lot more. Also Lego for some reason. There's a lot of Lego movies recently. Anyway, that's a whole different story. But you don't really get to see just those smaller films, those feel good. There's no action. It's just real people doing real things, having real problems. I think when people go to the movies, it's their way of escaping what's going on outside of those theater walls. They don't want to go to a film and be reminded that life isn't sunshine and rainbows, that you can't get by in life easy, that, there's nothing wrong in the world. People don't go to the movies for stuff like that. People go to the movies for Captain America or Batman or big explosions or Fast and Furious number 537. Like that's what they go to the theaters for. I swear to God, if there's really that many Fast and Furiouses, I don't know.
Give it 30 years.
And they're just going to CGI everybody. There's no way Vin Diesel is going to be in shape enough for over 500 films. Or alive.
Well, either that or they'd go the soap opera model where they just have everyone's kids in the various roles.
Oh, good Lord, I hope not. But anyway, getting back on track, nobody goes to the theaters for real life. They go to the theaters for fantasy, for fiction, to escape the mundane sorrow or sadness or terror that is actual living. And I guess I honestly have never really been a person that's wanted to escape from reality. I mean, from time to time, I'm just like, you know what? I really just don't want to adult today. I don't want to be an adult. I don't want to try to be an adult. I'm going to pretend everything around me doesn't exist and it's just me, my fiance and his brother and our dogs, and that's it. Like, I don't care about anything else. But I feel that those particular days are so far and few to the ones where I'm just like, life sucks and it's fine because there is still so much good in my life and there's still so much good and so much to be thankful for that it just completely destroys and obliterates all the bad that there is there for me. Chef was that reminder to me that, yeah, right now, or at least when I saw the film, life really, really sucks a lot. I think it was like around the time that I had broken up with my ex-boyfriend. I've mentioned a few times to my viewers, and I guess your viewers will listen to this as well, that it kind of became an abusive relationship towards the end, which kind of threw me for a loop. I wasn't expecting something like that from him. I didn't really see the signs until it had until the abuse had started happening. And luckily, I got myself out of it before it became worse than what it was. And so that was essentially all that I was dwelling on. But watching Chef and seeing somebody fall, to a pit and then get himself out of it by surrounding himself with good people, that was enough motivation for me to be able to do something like that. And I mean, who doesn't love food? So, like I said, I got myself into the food truck culture. I started following a bunch of different social media sites, or I should say social, like I would go to my social media outlets and start following a bunch of different news feeds. The one that I primarily follow is Food Truck Underground. For those who live in the Salt Lake City area or the Utah Valley area, it's like the most fantastic way to figure out when the food truck rallies are going on every evening. And I know that you can go to like a mall food court, or a lot of the food trucks have started to get their own little restaurants that you can like go down and sit and eat. But I like love going to food truck rallies. They're like super fun, just tons of music playing, tons of people there, kind of like how you see at the end of Chef, where he's at one of those rallies and it's just like long lines, and they're literally like cooking from the moment that it starts till the moment that it ends. Like that's literally the feeling that you get when you go to a food truck rally, and it even happens here in Salt Lake City. And it was just being around people, sharing food, enjoying food, and just being able to be a part of it all, and even just like chit chat with strangers. It was just so much fun, and it got me out of that self-pity. It got me out of that rut. It started to help me get out of that bad place and get to where I am today, where yeah, I still have my bad days, but I have so many more good days that just completely make me not even think about the bad that's happened in my life. And I just find it funny that a simple yet complex movie about a man who just starts his own food truck with his best friend and son was able to get me to where I am now. And that's why it's just like one of my favorite films. It's something so simple, and Jon Favreau probably doesn't even know at all what this movie did for me. And it was just like, yeah, here I am. Life is good.
Yeah, and that very much kind of goes to one of the things I like about film as a medium. And as someone who's seen a lot of movies from a lot of different genres, I kind of approach it the way you would a diet, or at least the way you should a diet. I mean, I love food too. That's kind of my problem. So,
oh, don't get me started on food. That's like if there's anybody out there that does a podcast on food, I would be more than happy to come and talk about Italian food. I could go on for that for ages, but continue.
Yeah. But yeah, like to continue the analogy, the way I see it with film, if people really want to appreciate film as an art form, it's not enough to watch just the genre stuff. The way I look at it, seeing films like Chef, some of the more indie films that aren't about high concept ideas, that are about people being people, dealing with real people issues, it's kind of the equivalent of basically eating the fruits and vegetables in a meal, where it's just like, yeah, you may not like it at first, but it's good for you. It gives your brain more ideas. I mean, Chuck Jones, the director of numerous Looney Tunes cartoons, was kind of famous about, hey, it's not enough to just watch the cartoons that we make. You need to read. You need to watch live action stuff. You need to get other ideas from other places. And the fact that a simple story like that can inspire people and motivate them to either change something about themselves or even get ideas. It gave me a few ideas of potential businesses. I'm just not sure if I'm going to jump on it because I don't know how to cook. But yeah, like literally coming out of the movie, but weird tangent, it gave me the idea of trying to start my own food truck centered around arepas, which are a Venezuelan. The best way to look at it, arepas are to Venezuela what sandwiches are to America, where they're just that common staple. But then I kind of realized I don't know about cooking, and I don't have the business know-how to manage the financials. So maybe down the road after I learn a few things. But it very much it speaks to the power of film as a medium, and especially to Chef, that a very what would be seen to most people as a simple feel-good story can have that kind of power.
Yeah, absolutely. It's Definitely a film that I could recommend to anybody, whether they just need to pick me up or just need some inspiration for their own art and craft. It definitely does deliver and carry that powerful message to anybody who's watching, whether or not they may interpret the film the way that you and I have this evening. But they definitely, like, anybody watching that film will definitely leave watching that film feeling a lot better about life, at least. And then it may even give them the motivation and inspiration to do something good with their lives. It could be cooking, it could be writing, it could be sharing a song or recording a cover of a song. It could just simply be volunteering. That's just what this movie can do for people. And I know that I speak on a very broad sense of it, saying, oh, this will happen, people will feel this way, because maybe it may not be the same for everybody, but that's the beauty of it. What it did for me could be entirely different for someone else, but it will still carry some form of inspirational power to that person.
And that's kind of the power of art in general, where it leaves you different from when you came in. Where with me, that was when I kind of started discovering the Salt Lake Film Society and the Tower Theater, the Broadway Theater. Personally, I prefer the Broadway because I like the facilities better. And so that was actually the first film I reviewed there. I actually got in really good with the people running it. They're really, really nice, really passionate about film. And so that was definitely a good introduction to another side of the Utah film scene that most people don't really get to see. I mean, most other states don't even have theaters catering to independent cinema. That's kind of one of the lucky things about the Salt Lake Valley area, is that they have those programs, not even just for watching movies. They also have programs for people who are trying to learn to become screenwriters or directors. Going to that theater kind of put it in the right context of, it very much put the theater and just the film itself, it's kind of like everything kind of aligned for me to kind of see it at the right time, especially given that I was getting burnt out on a lot of genre stuff and was looking for something different. And, well, it gave me something different. Instead of a hard-boiled egg filled with caviar, it gave me, well, a Cubano.
Also, that film just made me so hungry. Like, anytime I watch that film, it just makes me want to go to, like, Miami and New Orleans and maybe not Texas, because I couldn't give two about Texas. but, but, but that film just, like, made me super hungry. It made me, like, also just appreciate food. It made me want to cook more. I'm not, like, the best cook out there. I mean, I can get by cooking for myself and my fiance and my soon-to-be brother-in-law rather easily, but I mean, I'm definitely not a chef by any sense of the word, but it made me just want to, like, learn how to cook new things, and made me want to cook more, and made me want to eat fresh. And the entire film is just like any cooking show that you can see. It makes cooking feel and appear so easy, so simple, and when you really start getting the hang of it, obviously it is. But it just made me appreciate food so much more. And again, going back to, like, the power of food, how food just brings people together and creates relationships and creates friendships. And again, that's what it did for me when I got out and started just chatting with people and just enjoying the food that we're eating.
Yeah, and it had a similar effect on me. I've gone on record that I do have, like, an eating disorder that makes me trying new foods kind of a uphill battle. But it did make me want to try a few new things. I did try one of the foods that was featured in the film that my mom and I helped, like, my mom helped me make, and that was yuca fries, like yuca frita. And first it learned, like, it basically, yuca are like potatoes, but, like, they're much harder to cook than potatoes because you've got so much more prep, but they tasted pretty good, and it kind of led to me discovering other recipes that yuca can be used for. And much like you, it made me want to cook more, made me want to kind of think, okay, well, what ingredient do I want to experiment with this time? That's kind of the funny thing whenever people discuss the way food is depicted in film. I mean, people have done whole essays about it. The way you can shoot and frame food in the act of cooking is about as various as the way you can shoot and frame anything. You could, pretty much how you shoot and frame the food is very indicative of the story you're telling. And much like I mentioned earlier, at the start of the film where the food takes center stage, where you see mostly Jon Favreau's hands as he's, like, even when he's just making a grilled cheese sandwich, he's making it more complicated than it usually needs to be, because it just shows that level of obsession of him thinking, okay, making the food, this is the thing. This is, like, all I care about. And then by the film's end, when he kind of comes to terms with, okay, there's a little bit more to this. I was in a rut. My, like, personal life was, well, down the tubes. And so it's very much, it very much has that same effect where, like, okay, you first see him focusing solely on the food prep, focusing solely on these new recipes, and even just the way he would garnish and prepare certain dishes, to then going back to basics, like, okay, yeah, it's a Cubano, you have the Austin Midnight, and then all the different, I'm trying to remember, like, I know they did like those deep fried like bread things from New Orleans as well, and it's just kind of funny, like these seemingly simple recipes then kind of become like, okay, well, instead of trying to make all of this fancy artistic stuff, let's go back to basics, take these simple ideas and just do these simple ideas really, really well.
Also, kind of thinking of what you just said about the way that they shot and framed all the food, you can even tell like a different demeanor in Jon Favreau's character. You know, using the grilled cheese as an example, like it was just like very robotic, very mechanical, very, oh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to cut it like this, I need to plate it like this, I need to serve it like this, like very wound up, very tight. And then at the end of the film, when the food critic is like, hey, can I talk to you? Can I pull you off your line? It very much was like, huh? Oh, yeah, sure. Like, he was, like, loose, he was chill, he was maybe not, like, super relaxed in that very moment because he was preparing tons of food for a huge line of people, but it was like, oh, yeah, sure, let me just get off the line and, like, talk to you. You can just see right there that he's made a change in his life, in his lifestyle, in the way that he is now cooking. He's not wound up, he's not robotic, he's not, like, just, like, shades up by his eyes. He's part of it all. Like, he's one with the food.
Yep. And especially when you consider, like, again, the start of the film, when he reads the bad review, he basically more or less snaps and gets really angry, leading to his big meltdown that gets him fired. But then there, he's just like, yeah, I'm still angry at this guy, but I'll at least hear him out. I'm not gonna... And I mean, I especially like the line when, after the food critics kind of gone up, and John Leguizamo's character was like, that was a whole lot of listening and a whole lot of you not punching him. But that kind of goes to show, yeah, his character's kind of completed that journey. It almost is kind of the hero's journey, where you pretty much have it where he starts on his adventure, and then now that he's kind of, you're pretty much at the end of the journey home, where he's taking what he's learned on his adventure and passing it along to the people in his home. And so it very much shows, okay, that's a nice subtle way to show where, yeah, he still is angry, and he very much communicates it much more calmly instead of, you know, shouting and squeezing people's cakes, which...
That must have been so much fun, though. Like, come on. I mean, I wonder how many times that entire room erupted in laughter before he got the shot he needed, where like, that girl in front of him was like, holy shit, what's happening? And he's just, like, red in the face, pissed off. Like, I can only imagine it took so long to get to that point. But I definitely see what you're saying, and it kind of brings back something else that we were talking about before, where people go to the films to escape their realities. I think, like, people forget that life is a journey. Life, like, never is our lives all of a sudden going to dramatically change to like a Marvel film where all of a sudden it's like, oh, I've acquired these supernatural powers and now I'm gonna give myself a superhero name or a quote unquote alias so nobody knows who I am, even though it's very clearly obvious who I am in the real world. And I think just people just forget that life is a journey, and the way that we react and the way that we go about and how we live our lives and how we interact with people is all part of this journey. And it doesn't have to be this big explosion. I'm a Captain America, I'm Wonder Woman, I'm this comic book hero. It could be something as simple as, I'm Brinton Valli, I am a victim of abuse, and this is how I got myself out of it, and this is how I'm a better person for it. And kind of like how you said, Carl was able to effectively communicate, yeah, I still don't really like you, I'm still really, really, really upset about what happened, but I'm going to be a little more civil about it. And that is the journey I've had. That's the journey and the trials, and where I am today is how I've become a quote-unquote a hero in my own story. Life isn't all gumdrops and rainbows and sunshine and happiness. In the direction that our society is going in, I don't think we're ever going to get to a point, personally, that there's going to be world peace, because there are going to be racists, there are going to be people who don't see eye to eye, and there are going to be people who just don't want to be civil about it, who don't want to be mature about it. All it takes is just one person to be that way, to make a society better. And anyway, the point I'm trying to say is life is a journey, and the way that we traverse our journeys, or just how we react to it, We're always going to react badly at the start because when we have a new experience, we don't know how to react to it properly. New things are scary, and when we become an expert of that experience, then we know how, like, at that point, we know how to react appropriately. And you see that with Carl. I'm sure up to that bad critique of the meal that he prepared for that food critic, all he was getting was praise. 5 stars, 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5, like, excellent, superior, exceeds expectations, like, a 4.0 student. And then somebody comes along and they're like, hey, I know you, this is I know you can do better, so I'm gonna say it. That was horrible. And he snapped. He didn't know how to handle it. Like, that was new for him. So, I mean, yes, I'm justifying the way he reacted, but at the same time, I'm not gonna say what he did was age appropriate. I mean, that was pretty ridiculous. I would probably be terrified too if he grabbed my molten lava cake and smushed it in his hands. But he figures that out by the end of the movie to like how you said, hey, I'm still mad at you, but let's talk. And I'm just so grateful for people like Jon Favreau who are able to take the crap in their lives and make it into such a beautiful art form and just expose themselves so willingly to an audience, and to be able to again receive critique. I mean, well, I guess at that point, criticism and judgment for who he is. And that could be said for not just film alone, but for art, for writing, for music. And I mean, I don't know why Taylor Swift comes to mind, but I mean, Taylor Swift gets mocked a lot. Oh, she dates so and so. She and so break up. Here's a new Taylor Swift album. But the thing is, like, a lot of her music, as very directive as she is sometimes with whom she is singing to when she's pissed off, a lot of her music in a way has also helped me. Like, a lot of Adele's music in a way has helped me. I know I'm primarily choosing female artists and making the fact that I'm super gay very, very obvious right now with who I choose to listen to. But it's stuff like those that really hit home for me. I'm grateful for those artists, and for that reason, that's why I'm not like a huge hater on Taylor Swift. For an example, do I think like some of the things that she has done in the past couple of years just to gain more royalties, do I think that's cool? No, I don't. I think that's a little selfish of her because she is rolling in money that I will never see in my lifetime, and we're like the same age, which annoys me beyond hell. But she's given me music that has spoken to me on a level that may not speak to a lot of people on the same level it has for me, because she was willing enough to take crap in her life and be willing to expose herself through music and lyric. And I guess that's just why I've always been so, to tie this little dialogue all together, that's why I've always just been so interested in the arts. I'm a creative person. I like being creative, which is why I do YouTube videos, because they're kind of a more simplistic thing. I always try to do something different with my Let's Plays every time just to make it a little bit more interesting, but it allows me to get my creative outlet out, and it allows me to be creative. Then I can just kind of soak in all the creativity from people who have a little bit more experience and a little bit more talent, like people like Jon Favreau or Taylor Swift or all these other amazing actors and actresses and songwriters and writers and etc., etc., etc. I've always loved how people can take crap in their lives, expose it into something beautiful, and people can be inspired and grow from it. It's just the one thing that's always gotten me through my life.
I'm definitely the same way. That's kind of one of the reasons why I like Broadway musicals so much, for that same reason. I mean, when you look at stuff like Les Miserables and how miserable the time Victor Hugo wrote the story was, but within that misery you see kind of that nobility. I mean, you see Valjean go from being a criminal who hates the world, and then that one moment of kindness when the priest says, oh no, I gave him these candles, and the police say, okay, fine, the story checks out, and he's just like, hey, use this silver, become an honest man. And, well, he does. He tries to follow that same example, even to the point of almost undoing everything when a man is about to be convicted for his crimes, basically, leading to Who Am I? And that's why I like musicals like that so much, because you can tell just the genuine emotion and the life experience that helped inform it. I mean, Hamilton, when you look at Hamilton and the life that Alexander Hamilton lived, growing up as a bastard orphan in the Caribbean, and then becoming the first Secretary of the Treasury, as well as all the other stuff that the musical's covered. And yeah, that pretty much, it speaks to the power of art, and it speaks to the importance of life experience when it comes to creating art, and even when it comes to consuming art. It's very much, it's a lesson I think a lot of people can learn. Yeah, your life may not be as glim or as glamorous. Like, the romances aren't going to play out like The Notebook, or like, I don't watch a lot of romance films, so that's the only one I know. So, like, okay, it's not going to be The Notebook. It's not going to be a Jane Austen novel. You still have good memories. You have ups and downs. It's just most stories ignore the downs in favors of a lot of the ups. To kind of bring it back one, that very much communicates to how powerful Chef is as a film, and kind of the importance of why we need art. I mean, especially given that this world is like, yeah, we all want world peace, but not everyone wants it the same way. You've got like all these various ideological clashings, and so that's kind of why art plays such a role in a lot of these societies.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing that we can take from Chef is cut out the toxic people from your lives and go and do something that you love to do. Go and do something that makes you happy, and don't wait for adventure to come to you. In this world where everybody is just super afraid and doesn't want to express themselves because, heaven forbid, the internet is a scary place. Like, honestly, there's this thing called delete comment, which is super nice. I mean, I've done that a lot in the past couple of years of my existence. But do what makes you happy. If that means that you're sitting at a 9 to 5 desk job and it makes you miserable and all you want to do is write music, go and write music. I mean, will it pay the bills? Probably not. But there are people who probably, no, not probably, there are people who will completely support you 100% of the way. And you see that in this film. There are tons of people that just wanted Carl to be happy, and they kept pushing him to do something that would make him happy. But he got caught in this, he was in this rut, and he was just living in this fake life of, no, this already makes me happy. Why would I go do something that would, quote unquote, make me happy? Like, question mark? What are y'all talking about? And that thing that, between air quotes, made him happy was taken away from him. So then he was able to figure out, oh, everybody was right. Like, I hate when that happens to people, because it's like, hey, you probably shouldn't have waited too long. Sometimes it's just needed. I know for me, I have to wait that long and wait for something to be taken away before I realize, oh, wow, I really did have something good in my life. I know in the past year, I've had a little bit more bravery and courage to actually get myself out there and do things that have been difficult for me, instead of waiting until that very last second before it was, too late. But, like, just don't do that. And you will be able to find that happiness in doing what you love and being able to make those strives in your life that you're seeking. And if anybody watching this is sitting there thinking, oh, like, you're just full of it, maybe I am, but honestly, like, that is how life works. You can't sit there and wait for the things that you want to come to you. Sometimes you have to get up and you have to make it happen. Nothing's going to come to you on a silver platter anymore. Maybe it did in the past, maybe it did decades ago, but that's not the society we live in anymore. The society we live in, you have to be a little bit more proactive, and the good things will come from it.
As the old saying goes, fortune favors the bold. And that was actually a really good note for us to end on, because we're actually at the end of our show. So, before we go tonight, is there anything you'd like to plug or promote?
Myself, obviously. I wouldn't say I'm on a hiatus right now. It's just like a lack of time to record. But kind of like what Romney said, my name is Brinton Valli. I am pretty much me, myself, and I of Brinton Valli Gaming. I am a Let's Player, part of a small community with Romney, with the Shadow Blazer, Aldo, and Drac2326. You can find me at Brinton Valli Gaming, and I'm pretty sure Romney will just put a link in the description below. So if you guys are interested, you can check out my channel and subscribe. I'm currently playing through Super Mario Galaxy 2, and then I will return to a Let's Play of Final Fantasy VII, which has been on a hiatus that everybody hates, but it's just is what it is. And then you can occasionally see me not every Friday, but every Friday at 8 o'clock on Drac2326's channel. You may or may not see me on his podcast, Geek News Reviews and Opinions, where I get to talk about just weekly reports on the media and geek culture, video game culture, movie culture with Romney and other good friends of mine, since it's our cute little community that we've created here on YouTube. And so that is me. And you can also, one last thing, I'm sorry, you can also follow me on Twitter. It's the best way to get news reports for me when I'm actually take the time to get on Twitter and I'm not super busy with Final Fantasy XIV. My tag is BVALLI @01. If you follow me on Twitter, you will find out when I will be getting videos up again soon. I'm hoping next week. I've just kind of had no time to record, / I've been super lazy at the same time. And that is all from me.
All right, and if you want to get a hold of me directly and follow the show and the various projects I'm involved with, you can always find me at youtube.com/StudioGhostUtah. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Romney'sReviews, no apostrophe. And I'm also on Twitter at RomneyReviews. And that is it for this episode of Rhapsody in Cinema. Listeners, feel free to join me next time where my guest will be a different person.